Today is a wonderful day to talk about something so many beautiful souls struggle with silently, privately, almost unknowingly: the habit of explaining yourself in order to feel worthy. It's one of the quietest forms of self-betrayal because on the surface it looks harmless. Just a few extra words, a little more context, a gentle justification here, a soft apology there. But underneath, if you look closely and tenderly, you will see that every unnecessary explanation you offer is a small echo of a much older wound. Somewhere along your path, someone taught you that you must earn your space. Someone taught you that you must justify your needs. Someone taught you that you must apologize for your boundaries, your preferences, your desires, your truth. And when that belief settles into your subconscious, you begin to explain yourself not because others require it, but because you believe your existence, your choices, and your voice need permission. The healing begins the moment you realize this is not true. You do not need permission to be yourself. You do not need approval to walk your own path. You do not need to present your soul for inspection every time you choose differently. You are enough simply because you exist. Explanations do not create worthiness. Your being does. When we look deeper into the psychology of explaining, we always find the same roots: fear, fear, and more fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of being unworthy of love unless you justify every breath you take. These fears do not come from your wisdom. They come from your wounded inner child, the one who learned very early that survival depended on pleasing others. That child inside you still wants safety, still wants acceptance, still wants reassurance, and over-explaining became its strategy. But you are not that child anymore. You are not living in the past. You do not need to negotiate your right to exist. You do not need to convince anyone of your goodness. You do not need to perform clarity for people who have already decided how they want to see you. The truth is simple and freeing. You don't owe anyone a full story about your life. You are allowed to make decisions without explaining them. You are allowed to feel what you feel without justifying it. You are allowed to grow without asking for permission. And the moment you start honoring this truth, your energy changes. You move from seeking approval to giving yourself approval. You move from defending your choices to standing calmly inside them. You move from fear to alignment. And alignment, my dear, naturally leads you to the sacred power of silence, not the cold, punishing silence of withdrawal, but the warm, healing silence of inner truth. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is fullness. Silence is where your spirit finally has room to speak without interference. Silence is where your intuition becomes audible. Silence is where you hear the sound of your own wisdom. In silence, you remember what is true for you, not what the world wants from you. When you spend your life explaining, you drown in noise. When you return to silence, you rise in clarity. And this is why silence is one of the most powerful spiritual practices. It brings you back to yourself. In silence, you don't have to impress anyone. You don't have to shapeshift to fit a situation. You don't have to cushion your truth. You simply exist, whole, present, grounded, and enough. The more comfortable you become in silence, the less you depend on external understanding to feel secure. Because the truth is, you don't need others to understand your path for you to be allowed to walk it. I want you to feel this with your whole heart. Explaining yourself drains your energy, but silence restores it. When you explain yourself, You place your self-worth in someone else's hands. When you choose silence, you place your self-worth back inside your own soul. Explaining tries to change someone else's mind. Silence changes your vibration. Explaining is an attempt to control the outcome. Silence is trust in your alignment. When you choose silence deliberately, not as avoidance, but as self-respect, you step into a new level of personal power. You realize you do not need to win anyone over. Your energy speaks louder than any explanation you could give. Your presence communicates more truth than your words ever will. Your inner peace becomes a boundary. Your dignity becomes your language. And this shift is not small, it is life-changing. Think of how many times you've explained your decisions to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. Think of how many times you've softened your truth to avoid discomfort. Think of how many times you've tried to justify your feelings to people who did not have the emotional availability to receive them. And now imagine how freeing it would be to simply say nothing, to honor your truth without shrinking it into explanations. When you stop explaining, you stop abandoning yourself. When you stop explaining, you stop outsourcing your sense of worth. When you stop explaining, you stop giving others the power to validate or invalidate who you are. You begin to trust your voice. You begin to trust your intuition. You begin to trust your choices. You begin to trust your wisdom. And the result is profound. You rise. One of the greatest spiritual truths is that silence is not empty. Silence is alignment. It is the place where you hear the guidance that has been waiting for you. It is the place where your soul whispers solutions your mind cannot create. It is the place where fear dissolves and clarity appears. In silence, you reconnect with yourself. In silence, you recognize your value. In silence, you remember that you are worthy of living without justification. And every moment spent in silence makes you stronger, softer, clearer, wiser. This is why I want you to practice one of my most loving affirmations, one that brings you back home when the world feels loud. In silence, I find myself again. Say it gently. Let it melt into you. Let it become the sanctuary you carry everywhere. Because the truth is, you do not need to be understood to be at peace. You do not need to be approved of to feel valuable. You do not need to be explained to be worthy. You only need to belong to yourself. And when you finally belong to yourself, you rise, quietly, gracefully, confidently, without explanation. Let me share something with you, something I learned through countless conversations, countless healing sessions, countless moments sitting with the tender, hurting hearts of people who thought they were broken, simply because they felt alone. There is a sacred difference between loneliness and aloneness. And when you truly understand this difference, your entire relationship with yourself changes. Loneliness happens when you are surrounded by people who cannot see your heart, who cannot feel your essence, who cannot meet you where your soul lives. Loneliness is the ache of being misunderstood, overlooked, or emotionally unfelt. Loneliness is the discomfort of being physically with others but spiritually unseen. But aloneness, oh my dear, aloneness is sacred. Aloneness is where you return to yourself. Aloneness is where you breathe without performing. Aloneness is where you stop adjusting your spirit to match the expectations of the room. Aloneness is where your soul finally exhales. When you choose solitude instead of fearing it, loneliness dissolves. When you choose yourself instead of abandoning yourself, aloneness becomes nourishment. And when you allow yourself to be alone without shame, you finally begin to hear the truth of who you are beyond all the noise. You discover that being alone is not a punishment. Being alone is a doorway. It is a portal to clarity, to self-recognition, to self-honoring. You need moments of aloneness to remember who you are when you are not trying to please anyone, fix anything, or justify your existence. And the more comfortable you become in your own presence, the less you will ever chase people who cannot meet you. This brings us into a profound truth that many people don't realize until years of emotional exhaustion have shaped them. When you stop explaining yourself, you begin healing. Healing does not begin when your circumstances change. Healing does not begin when others finally understand you. Healing begins the moment you stop abandoning your inner knowing just to be accepted. Every time you over-explain, you whisper to yourself, "My truth needs permission." Every time you defend your choices, you say quietly, "My intuition cannot be trusted." Every time you adjust your voice to avoid judgment, you teach yourself, "My feelings are not valid unless someone approves." But when you stop explaining, you break that pattern. When you stop explaining, you step out of the identity of someone who needs to prove themselves. You stop allowing other people to decide whether your feelings are legitimate. You stop allowing someone else's perspective to decide your worth just to be palatable. And instead, you begin standing in your inner integrity. You begin listening to your body's wisdom. You begin honoring your emotional truth. You begin living from your inner center instead of from external expectations. I want you to feel this deeply. Silence is a form of self-respect. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is sovereignty. Silence is the energy of someone who no longer begs to be understood. Silence says, "I do not need to convince anyone of my worth. I am showing it by how I live." Silence says, "I do not need to justify what my soul already knows." Silence says, "I am enough without explanation." And of all the choices you will ever make in your healing journey, choosing yourself is the most powerful act of love you will ever offer your spirit. This is not selfishness. This is wisdom. This is maturity. This is spiritual adulthood. Because choosing yourself simply means you stop betraying your own truth in order to be convenient for others. It means you stop shrinking your needs to avoid discomfort. It means you stop chasing approval from people who cannot even hear the sound of their own hearts. It means you stop convincing anyone to value what they were never meant to carry. Choosing yourself means you become your own safe place, not as a last resort, but as a conscious choice. You stop running after people who misunderstand your soul. You stop trying to twist your spirit into shapes that hurt you. You stop performing in emotional roles you outgrew years ago, and you begin living from a deeper place, wholeness. When you choose yourself, everything around you shifts. The relationships that drain you fall away. The environments that suffocate you feel heavier. The voices that used to intimidate you lose their power. And new, beautiful, aligned experiences begin flowing toward you because your vibration rises the moment you stop abandoning yourself. Repeat this affirmation softly and lovingly. I choose myself first because when I am whole, everything aligns. Feel the freedom inside those words. Feel the relief. Feel the truth. Choosing yourself is not about rejecting others. It's about returning to yourself. When you return to yourself, everything else rises to meet the new frequency you hold. Now let's go even deeper. into a place most people never explore: integrity, the return to your true self, your core self, your undistorted self. Integrity is not about morality. It is not about perfection. It is not about meeting anyone else's standards. Integrity is about knowing who you are and honoring that truth without diluting it to satisfy anyone's expectations. Many people over-explain because they are not in integrity with themselves. They are disconnected from their own emotions. They have been taught to mistrust themselves. They have been told their intuition is wrong. They have learned to ignore their inner signals. And so, when they feel something strongly, instead of honoring it, they explain it. When they sense something is off, instead of trusting themselves, they justify it. When their boundaries feel violated, instead of asserting them, they rationalize them. But when you are in integrity, true soul, deep integrity, explanations become unnecessary. You do not explain what you choose. You choose it. You do not defend your boundaries. You live them. You do not ask permission to feel. You feel. You do not justify your direction. You follow it. And silence becomes the place where your integrity breathes. Silence becomes the moment where your soul sits at the head of the table again. Silence becomes the energy that says, I respect myself more than I respect the noise. And when you live inside that kind of integrity, the integrity of alignment, the integrity of self-respect, the integrity of spiritual truth, you rise, quietly, strongly, clearly, no explanations, no apologies, no shrinking. And that, my dear, is when life finally begins to mirror your wholeness back to you. Next, I want to share with you some of the most powerful practices I've ever taught. Practices designed to help you heal in silence, reclaim your energy, and choose yourself from a place of love, not fear. These exercises are gentle, simple, and profoundly transformative because they help you return to your center without effort. They are not meant to pressure you. They are invitations, doorways, loving reminders that your inner world is the foundation of everything you experience. When you become quiet inside, your life becomes quiet outside. When you choose yourself inside, your relationships become healthier outside. When you stop explaining inside, you rise outside. Healing is not dramatic. Healing is subtle. Healing is the return to the truth that has always lived in you. And all 8 of these practices are designed to help you remember that truth, softly, steadily, beautifully. Let's begin with the first practice, the 2-minute silence reset. You have no idea how much your nervous system craves 2 minutes of quiet, not silence from the world, but silence from the noise inside your own mind. I once said, silence is where truth lives, and I meant every word. The world is loud. People are loud. Expectations are loud. But your wisdom is soft. And to hear it, you must create a moment of stillness. So each day, at least once, I want you to follow this simple ritual. Sit down comfortably. Close your eyes. Bring one hand to your heart. Inhale slowly for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. Then repeat the gentle affirmation. I return to myself. Let the words float inside you. Let them realign your energy. Let them soothe your body. Nothing is required. Nothing is forced. You are simply remembering who you are. This tiny practice disconnects you from the noise and reconnects you with the truth. You know who you are. You know what you feel. You know what you need. Silence is your home, not your punishment. The second practice is incredibly powerful and reveals more about your emotional life than any journal entry ever could. The 24-hour no explanation challenge. This practice is not about restricting yourself or repressing your voice. It is about observing the moments where your fear still leads. For just one day, 24 gentle hours, you commit to not explaining your feelings, your decisions, or your needs. Not because you are hiding, but because you are watching. You are learning where you lose your power. And each time you feel the urge to explain, place your hand over your chest and whisper inside, "I am safe without explaining." Feel those words. Let them melt your anxiety. Let them bring your inner child into a sense of safety. When you stop explaining for one day, you suddenly see how often you apologize for existing. You see how often you soften your truth. You see how often you shrink to avoid misunderstandings. And the moment you see it, you reclaim your authority. You rebuild your inner throne. You shift from someone seeking permission to someone owning their inner kingdom. The explanation urge becomes a doorway to awareness, and awareness is where healing begins. The third practice is a variation of mirror work, one of my signature teachings. But this version is perfectly tuned to the theme of self-approval and inner authority. I call it "You Don't Need to Prove Anything." Stand in front of your mirror. Look into your own eyes, not at your face, not at your flaws, not at the image you judge. Look at the soul behind the eyes, the part of you that has survived every chapter of your life. Then say slowly with tenderness, "You don't need to explain yourself." Then again, "You are enough exactly as you are." And finally, "I choose you." These words sink into your subconscious. They soften the memory of years spent chasing approval. They soothe the part of you that felt unworthy unless someone validated your choices. They remind the inner child that they no longer need to fight for love. Mirror work rewrites the story your nervous system believes about you. When you look at yourself and speak to yourself with love, you dissolve the core wound of "I'm not enough." And from that dissolution comes power, gentle, grounded, sacred power. Now we move into a practice that transforms your energy on a profound level. The energy leak check. Every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you lose energy. Every time you justify your feelings, you lose energy. Every time you try to make someone understand you, you lose energy. And as I once said, where you lose energy, you lose yourself. So I invite you to take a pen and write down 3 recent moments where you felt compelled to explain. Write the situation. Write how you felt. Write why you explained. Then ask yourself 3 questions. What was I hoping to receive? Why did I need them to understand me? What fear was I trying to soothe? And then write this sentence beneath each one. I reclaim my energy from this story. Let that declaration sink into your body. Feel the return. Feel the closing of the leak. Feel yourself coming back into alignment. This practice is not about guilt. It is about clarity. When you see where your energy escapes, you learn how to protect your inner power. You cannot rise if you are leaking energy everywhere. Reclaim your power, and you reclaim your peace. The 5th practice is one of my favorites because it is incredibly simple and unbelievably transformative. The 3-second inner pause. This practice is for the moments when you are about to react, defend, justify, or explain. Before you respond, stop for 3 seconds. Breathe. Place your awareness in your heart and tell yourself, my peace is more important than being understood. You cannot imagine how much of your life changes when peace becomes a priority. Reactions soften, conversations shift, arguments dissolve, old patterns crumble, because explanations are often born from urgency, and urgency is a trauma response. When you pause, you shift from reaction to consciousness. You reclaim your timeline. You break the cycle. You return to yourself instead of losing yourself. A 3-second pause is long enough for your brain to choose alignment over fear. It is long enough for your spirit to steer your choices. It is long enough to save you from emotional exhaustion. And it is long enough to remind you that your peace belongs to you, not to other people's interpretations. The 6th practice is one of the most loving commitments you will ever make to yourself. Choose yourself at least once a day. Healing does not require huge actions. Healing requires consistent tenderness. So each day choose one small action that exists for no one but you. Something that nourishes you. Something that centers you. Something that honors you. It could be turning off your phone earlier. It could be drinking warm water before bed. It could be taking a walk alone. It could be saying no to a request that drains you. It could be giving yourself permission to rest. It could be choosing the thing you want without asking for agreement. And while doing it, say softly, "I choose me." This practice reteaches your nervous system that your needs matter. It builds self-respect. It heals the wound of abandonment. And the more consistently you choose yourself in small ways, the easier it becomes to choose yourself in the big moments, the ones that define your life. Choosing yourself does not separate you from the world. It strengthens your connection to it. Because when you are whole, everything aligns. Now let's move into one of the deepest inner child healing practices I have ever taught: silent self-approval. Many people believe affirmations only work when spoken aloud, but there is another level, a quieter, deeper level, where affirmation becomes vibration, not sound. At night before bed, place your hand on your heart, close your eyes, slow your breathing, and silently think the words, "I approve of myself." Don't force belief. Don't push certainty. Just allow the vibration of the statement to sit gently inside your body. Silent approval is powerful because it bypasses the part of your brain that resists new beliefs. When spoken internally, the affirmation becomes a feeling, and feelings rewire your subconscious far more quickly than words. This practice melts internal criticism. It softens anxiety. It restores safety. And it gently detoxes the mind from years of self-judgment. Approval is not arrogance. Approval is love. Approval is protection. Approval is the medicine your inner child has been needing for so long. And finally, we reach the 8th practice, a deep, energetic healing tool called observe without explaining. I often said, observe, don't judge, because judgment interrupts healing. Observation deepens it. The next time you feel the urge to explain, do not fight the feeling. Do not suppress it. Do not shame yourself. Instead, notice the sensations in your body. Do your shoulders tighten? Does your chest heat up? Does your stomach twist? Do your hands clench? Just notice. Just observe. And gently breathe through it while thinking, I allow this feeling to exist. When you stop judging the urge, it loses power. When you stop fighting the sensation, it moves through you. When you allow your body to feel without adding narrative, you heal the root, the energy beneath the explanation. This practice changes everything because it teaches your nervous system safety. It dissolves emotional reactivity. It transforms your relationship with discomfort, and it frees you from the reflex of justifying your existence. Observation is liberation. My dear, all 8 of these practices are invitations. Invitations to step into a life where you are no longer shaped by fear, approval seeking, or old survival patterns. They are doorways to a truer version of you, the version who trusts themselves, honors their own voice, respects their own boundaries, and walks through life from inner authority instead of external permission. Healing in silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of self. Choosing yourself is not rebellion. It is alignment. And when you live from these practices, something extraordinary happens. You rise without explaining, you grow without defending, and you shine without apologizing. You return to the truth that you are whole, worthy, and beautifully enough exactly as you are. There is something beautifully powerful that happens when you stop filling space with explanations and begin filling it with presence. When you stop trying to convince, defend, or justify yourself, your energy begins to rise in a way that words never could. People think power comes from speaking louder, proving more, pushing harder, but real inner power is quiet, steady, grounded, and unmistakable. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to fight for recognition. It simply is. And when you step into silence with intention, not as avoidance, but as alignment, something shifts inside you. You begin to inhabit your body differently. You begin to breathe more deeply. You begin to walk with a sense of worth that no explanation could ever give you. Your self-respect grows. Your emotional reactivity dissolves. Your sense of identity stabilizes. And you suddenly find yourself less influenced by other people's opinions, comments, or projections. When you change your inner world, your outer world responds. Not because you spoke, but because your vibration changed. Life responds to energy, not explanations. You don't have to explain who you are becoming. You don't have to validate your healing. You don't have to justify your boundaries. Your life will show it. Your peace will show it. Your strength will show it. And the right people will feel it without you saying a single word. This brings us into one of the most beautiful truths of transformation. When you rise in silence, your evolution speaks for you. Healing is not loud. Growth is not performative. Transformation is not a speech. It is a frequency. And when that frequency shifts, everything around you shifts with it. When you heal, your relationships are the first to change, not because you force them, but because your energy no longer matches the old patterns. Conversations feel different. Interactions feel different. The way you respond feels different. You are no longer triggered by the same things. You are no longer pulled into the same dynamics. You are no longer available for what drains you. And without saying a word, people feel the difference. Some will rise to meet you. Some will fade away. This is not loss. This is alignment. When you heal, your thoughts change. The old self-critic softens. The fear that once controlled you becomes quieter. The doubt that once held you back loses its authority. You speak to yourself with more compassion. You make choices that honor your well-being. You stop negotiating your worth. And the world begins reflecting your new internal truth. When you heal, your energy changes. You become calmer, clearer, more grounded, more magnetic. Opportunities that never noticed you before suddenly find their way to your doorstep. Doors that were once closed quietly open. Blessings that felt delayed arrive right on time. And all of it happens without you needing to declare your transformation. You don't need to announce your rebirth. People feel it. They feel the softness in your presence. They feel the strength in your boundaries. They feel the peace in your silence. They feel the confidence in your energy. You do not rise by convincing anyone. You rise by becoming yourself again. And so, my dear, as you continue to heal, as you continue to grow, as you continue to return to your own inner truth, I want you to carry one final affirmation, a blessing, a reminder, a compass inside your heart. Let the words wrap around you like warm sunlight, letting their vibrations settle into your body. I rise in silence. I heal in peace. I grow with grace. And life responds to my new energy. Say it slowly. Say it lovingly. Say it until it becomes the frequency you live in. And remember, you never needed to explain yourself to be worthy. Your energy has always been enough. Your silence has always been powerful. And your transformation, felt not spoken, will speak for you in every room you enter.